Welcome back to another episode of the Find Food Freedom Podcast. Today, we are sticking with our rapid fire theme here. I've been doing lots of rapid fires lately, but this one's different because we're doing rapid fire holiday edition. So the rapid fires came to be because I do question boxes all the time on my Instagram, and people submit hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions. And I've gotten to a point where I'm like, how do I respond to everybody when everybody, of course, you can, respond on your Instagram story, but there were so many repeat questions, and I want to just be able to reach as many people as possible, as fast as possible, get this information out. So that's where these rapid fire episodes came to be. But today's specifically is going to be holiday edition, because Lord knows that diet culture is extra loud during the holidays. Not only the holidays, but also the New Year, New You bullshit. We can do a whole nother episode of Rapid Fires just on January alone. But today, before we do that, we start every Find Food Freedom podcast episode with a Find Food Freedom win or glimmer, if you will, from somebody who wrote in. I was on a lovely walk this morning and just was, kind of peeking through some DMs, and this one came through. And I actually chose this one. I screenshotted it. And I chose this one because not only was it, a glimmer and a nice thing to say and a nice thing to share, but it was also a question. And I thought, you know what? Let's do this one because we can highlight it and share a resource, because that's what these podcasts are all about, is getting you the resources that you need, not only from the Find Food Freedom team, but from the thousands of colleagues that I work alongside in the space that are doing amazing work. So I'm going to read this. This was from Michelle. So thank you so much, Michelle, with one L. Thank you so much, Michelle, for this message. She said, "Hi, Sam and Find Food Freedom team. I've been on an intuitive eating journey for almost a year, and I love your podcast." Thank you. It has been amazingly helpful, especially recently. I'm wondering if you have any recommendations on how to decline getting weighed at the doctor's office. I have a gyno appointment coming up, and I'm so nervous that I will learn my weight, which is just not helpful for me. I'm proud of myself for not doing a weigh-in for about 6 months now at home, and I don't want to ruin any of my progress. Thank you so much for all that you do. So I loved how this, again, was something very kind. Thank you, Michelle, for all your kind words. We're so happy to have you as a listener. And a question. So we did an entire episode on the What the Actual Fork podcast about this exact topic. So it's so easy for me to point you to that. But more importantly, the person that we interviewed was Dr. Asher Larmy. And they have an amazing account that they created that has resources and website, which is noway.org. And that's WEIGH, noway.org, which has tons and tons of resources, not only if you are a patient, right, but also for professionals. So if you're a health professional and you're looking to make your space more inclusive and not bring all of the weight stigma bullshit into your practice, there's some great resources there. So again, that's Dr. Asher Larmy, noway.org. So wanted to share that resource in addition to that very kind glimmer. I'd love to hear, like, this person, Michelle, of course, who wrote in, has gone 6 months without weighing herself. That is 6 months without the triggering thoughts, focusing on a number, which is literally just our gravitational pull to the earth, has no moral value, doesn't tell us anything. So very excited for you, Michelle. And thank you so much for writing in. All right. So now that brings us to the bulk of the episode, which today we're going to be going through, again, a rapid fire. And so far, this is my third one, so still new to these. But being that it is my third rapid fire, I have come to find that my quota per episode, if you will, is going to be 8 questions. So if you have an iPhone and you screenshot all of the Instagram question boxes that people write in, it gives you 8. And I'm like, all right, that's a comfortable amount. So if for any reason I go too far in depth on one today, I might cut it short and we could do a part 2. But I think that I want to try to challenge myself to, again, with rapid fire, get right to the point, right with the tips and the tricks and what I would recommend. I also want to put a disclaimer on this episode that yes, I'm a registered dietitian. I am a certified personal trainer. I am a certified intuitive eating counselor. And this podcast episode is for informational and educational purposes only. Every single person that wrote in that I'm going to respond to, I don't know them personally. I don't know anything about them. I don't know anything about their medical care, their environment, their socioeconomic status, their race, their gender, their sexuality. Like, I know nothing about them. And so, in order to provide somebody with professional counseling, I have to have a health history on them and know a lot of different things. So I like to preface that because, yes, this is going to be great information and education and resources, but please note that this does not substitute professional counseling if you are struggling with an eating disorder or disordered eating. But I hope that this can provide a lot of resources and help. So let's get into it. This is Rapid Fire Holiday Edition. So when I do rapid fires on the question box, how I ask it is give me the biggest food, body image, and movement obstacles that you are struggling with. And then in this question box, I said related to the holidays. So that way, when people are giving me, it's more like statements versus questions. It's like, how do I deal with this, right? This obstacle, this struggle, this thing that I know that I'm going to endure over the holidays. So let's start with, now again, there was more than 8, but I only screenshotted 8. And I tried to look at some of the other pages because there was a lot of doubles. So the first one, I'm going to put 2 in one box, was binge eating / stress eating that leads to emotional eating. Or excuse me, it says stress leading to emotional eating. Okay, so how I would respond to this during the holidays is I want to encourage you to not restrict your intake. Not only do not restrict your intake during the holidays, but do not restrict your intake before the holidays. So depending on when you're listening to this, right, this might be weeks or months leading up to some of the holidays. And I want you to think of this like a bow and arrow. If you pick up a bow and arrow and you tell yourself, I'm going to be good, AKA restrict this holiday season, you're pulling back this bow and arrow and you're going to hit a breaking point. And you're going to say, F it and let go. And that arrow is going to fly so much further in the opposite direction if you're trying to restrict, and you're going to end up feeling out of control around food. We know that restriction is the number one indicator of binging. So if you restrict before the holiday season, it is going to make you feel more out of control when you are at more social events during the holidays, or when you are around foods that maybe you're not around every single day during the year. So I want to encourage you right here, right now, to not only not restrict during the holidays, but also incorporate all foods year round. The more exposure you have to food, the less scary it becomes, the less fearful it becomes, the less chokehold it has over you, and the more calm you will be around it. So this is like intuitive eating 101. And I love to encourage clients to look at the holidays as an amazing time to practice using intuitive eating framework, to stretch those intuitive eating muscles, if you will, because you're exposed to more of those fun foods and those play foods that diet culture calls crap or junk. So the more exposure you have to them, the more you're like, it's just food. Do I want it? Maybe one night I don't. And that's okay too. And so that would be covering more of the binge eating. Now, the stress eating element, or the stress leading to emotional eating, here's what I will say on that. First of all, eating is a coping mechanism. It does not make you a bad human being. It makes you a human being. If you've ever turned to food to cope, congrats, you're human. This is not about saying, don't eat, you're stressed, get out of the kitchen, go for a walk, like, no, if that worked, then nobody would stress eat. So what I want you to recognize is that if you are feeling stress, what are coping mechanisms that make you feel pleasant in your body if we are not physically hungry? Because there's a difference. You can be physically hungry and be stressed at the same time. Okay. You're allowed to feel emotion and hunger. So if that's the case, go eat. But if you can rule out physical hunger, in that moment, you're saying food is not what I need. Like I want it because I'm stressed. Then I want to encourage you to not say I'm not allowed to eat. No, we're not doing that. But ask yourself, is there something else in addition to food that is going to make me feel more pleasant in my body, mentally, emotionally, physically? So let's say that I'm just going to use a random example. Let's say you just ate a meal, you're not physically hungry, you're really feeling stress, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to go into my bathroom. I'm going to light a candle. I'm going to start a bath. I'm going to take a bath for 10 minutes, see how I feel. If that does not decrease my stress, then I know that I have availability and full permission to go to food if I need it. Because remember, food is a coping mechanism. If you have ever used food to get you through a tough time, that's a really great coping mechanism that kept you safe. It served a purpose. So instead of shaming yourself for finding a coping mechanism that kept you safe and you didn't self-harm, what if we could be proud of ourselves for coping and say, in addition to food, what are some other coping mechanisms I can add to my toolbox? That's where I would go with that one. Woo! All right, there we go. On to the next one. Being around family that are, in general, very activating, making body image and ED loud to cope. So there's that one. There's a lot. I think the rest, minus one of these all are like a different way of basically saying, how do I deal with family members that are super entrenched in diet culture and trigger me? Like that could be the episode in and of itself. So I think there's so much. I'm going to read a couple of these rapid fires because I think they all really relate. And then I can really break some of this down more in depth. There's that one I just read. There's another one that says going to see family who judges feeding my body consistently and intuitively. There's another one that says hearing others talk about their diets, bodies, food choices, etc. Eye roll. I'm dreading it. So you can see there's a lot of different messages here that are all kind of saying the same thing, saying, how do I deal with family members that are entrenched in diet culture and are going to trigger the work that I have done with my relationship with food and body, which is such great questions that people sent in, because these are questions that we all the time work through in session with our clients during the holiday season. So buckle up. Let's get into it. All right. The first thing that you have to recognize, first up, release yourself of the responsibility of convincing other human beings not to diet. I'm going to say it again. Release yourself of the responsibility of convincing other people not to diet. So not only that, I want you to think about that you need to release yourself of the responsibility of convincing other people to do intuitive eating, right? Or to do whatever you're doing, if you're doing, let's say you're working with a coach or, whoever. So That is something that took me a very, very, very long time to grasp, to understand. And once I really did that, it cleared up so much mental energy, stress, going into any type of social event, not even just the holidays. And I am a registered dietitian, certified intuitive eating counselor, certified personal trainer. And it's not my job to convince people not to diet. And once you stop defending, trying to defend intuitive eating or trying to convince people to not diet, you get to just chill. And it's so much more enjoyable. And so that, like, if you don't remember anything else from this episode, that right there is what I really, really want you to walk away from with, because releasing yourself of that responsibility, when you hear diet talk, when you hear body image talk, when you hear food talk, you get to just dust your hands off, push your chair back and say, my work here is done. I don't have to do anything. And no, you may be a little different than me. Like, obviously, when I'm at a family function or, a social event with friends, like, people generally know what I do for a living or think they do. And so I might get more like specific questions geared towards me. But if you're someone who you're not a dietitian, right? I don't know what you do for a living, and it doesn't matter. But if that's not your profession, then hopefully that will even take another load off, because it's like you can steer that conversation in so many different ways. So that's my number one tip. From there, I think it's safe to say that every single function at the holidays will have some kind of food talk, some kind of body talk, because unfortunately, that is the world that we live in. So how we can look at this is expect it. Know that it's going to happen, and actually role play what could be the possible worst thing that a family member or a friend at a social event, what is the worst possible thing that somebody could say to you at an event? Or maybe you don't even have to go worst case scenario with it. What if we just say, like, okay, these are 10 things I think that will happen, right, at this event? Because most social events during the holidays are surrounded with food, right? That's like you go to a dinner or a dinner party or whatever. So there's going to be food. So there's going to be talk about food. And people in diet culture tend to build community off of their dieting, right? They might think they're morally better if they restrict calories or a food group. So they may come to this event proud of restricting carbs and want to tell everybody around them that they're doing it because they think that it's impressive and that it's going to bring more friends or more likability based on what they share regarding dieting. So I think that when you step into social events, I want you to role play things. And by doing that, you get to experience the emotional charge that would come from that scenario before it happens in private. And you get to craft how you respond in those moments. So then when they happen in real life, you're like, I got this. I know what I'm doing here. And there's pretty much 3 things that you can do. I want you to remember these 3 things. You can, 1, walk away. Someone says something, you just leave. You don't even engage. You just turn and go. Boom. Don't say anything. That teaches the person right there, I don't engage in this conversation. 2, have a redirect ready to go. So maybe it's, let me use me as an example. Okay, I know that this aunt is going to ask about this diet, so I'm ready to go. I have a picture locked and loaded of my French bulldog. And when she brings this up, I say, like, if she says, oh my God, did you hear about the keto diet? I lost 20 pounds and I'm doing it right now. I say, I don't even have to say that's great. Okay, great for you. Oh my gosh. Did I show you this picture of Biggs, my French bulldog? Look how cute he is. Boom. Total redirection. Don't even engage in the diet talk. You are actively telling this person, I don't engage when you talk about dieting. So I am going to talk about my French bulldog instead. Or, oh my God, did you see the Barbie movie? What did you think? Or, oh my God, did you see the Eras Tour movie? Because I saw it on opening day with my girlfriends. Yes, I am going on October 14th. Thank you very much. So get locked and loaded for a redirect. Okay. Third thing you can do, set a boundary if it feels right. Now, this is where I want you to go back to my first piece of advice, where it's not your responsibility to teach or to convince other people not to diet. So if setting a boundary feels like it's going to turn into a battle royale of dieting versus intuitive eating, and you feel like it's just going to be a lot, then you don't have to do this one. But if it feels like it's very unsafe in this environment and you think that setting a boundary is going to be right for you, then set that boundary. It could be, you know what, Aunt Cheryl, I'm happy for you that you're happy, but talking about food and bodies is really triggering for me. And I'd really appreciate it if we could talk about something else. Boom, redirect the conversation. So you can set that boundary if you want, but you don't have to. Okay. So I just kind of did 3 of the rapid fire questions all balled up into one here. And one very grand piece of advice I would give, whether you walk away, redirect, and or set a boundary and then redirect, is understanding that every single person's, how do I say this? Every single person's thoughts, opinions, anything that someone else says about your food choices or your body has everything to do with their own relationship with food and body and nothing to do with you. So if your Aunt Cheryl, we're going to go back to her. If Aunt Cheryl says, oh, you look like you've gained some weight this season, or the audacity of someone fucking says that is a whole nother conversation. But I want you to, if possible, again, role play that before it happens. So you don't have that emotional reaction. You don't lose yourself in the present. And you can just think in that moment, take a deep breath and say, wow, Aunt Cheryl, like, this is a direct reflection of her own body. If she's saying this out loud to me, I can only imagine what she says in her darkest of hours when she's alone about her own body. And the more that we recognize that everybody's comments about food and body have everything to do with them and nothing to do with you, really, really, really saves you, especially during the holidays. So release yourself of that responsibility and recognize that other people's thoughts and opinions about food and body have everything to do with them, nothing to do with you. This helps so much. And I think that this is the key to not only surviving the holidays with diet culture entrenched loved ones, but to thriving in them. Because if you choose to go to a social function, you will be surrounded by diet culture. That's unfortunately the world that we live in. And so for some of you, and depending on the family members, the friends, the situation, it may be more safe to skip certain social events to keep yourself safe, right? To keep your progress that you've made with your relationship with food and body. And some of you, like when I was talking about some of these tips, you're like, oh yeah, I can do that. Or like you may be further along in your recovery And so it's so important to recognize that what's going to work for one listener is not going to work for another. And every situation is different, right? So what might work for you one night doesn't work at another social event, and that is okay too. And it's important to expect the triggers, understand that they are going to happen. And the more that you role play them, the more that you talk through them, whatever it is, you're going to feel more prepared in those situations. And then something that I haven't brought up too is getting support. And that could look like 500 different things. That could be professional support. So I'll use the Find Food Freedom team as an example. Our clients get 24/7 chat access to our team. So we have basically, it looks like text message. It's a HIPAA compliant platform that we are texting with our clients. So if they get super triggered in a moment, they're sending us like, oh my gosh, my sister-in-law just said this. I can't freaking believe this. Like, I'm so triggered right now. And boom, we can be there to help support and to walk them through that. For some of you, it might be therapy, and maybe not like being able to talk to your therapist right away, but knowing like, okay, I have this, party on Friday. I'm going to schedule therapy on Thursday so I can role play these situations with my intuitive eating counselor, with my therapist who is trained in body image and eating disorder, so I can get emotionally ready to go to this event, right? And some of you, it might be friends. It might be a family member. If you're lucky enough to have a friend or family member that will be at the social event with you during the holidays, then it's having that safe person that you can kind of know, or they know, you can communicate to each other like, hey, if Aunt Cheryl says X, Y, or Z, I might need to come to you and like take a minute and breathe. Could be a friend who is also healing their relationship with food and body, and they are at at their own family holidays. You're at your family holiday, but you're texting and you're just there. You're like, oh my gosh, this person said that. Like, again, venting, recognizing that you're not alone. That is so important. So getting that support too is really, really helpful. So those are, I had 3 different rapid fires there. I know I took a long explanation, but I think that really, really covers the navigating diet culture entrenched loved ones during the holidays. All right. I have another one here that says binging, which we already touched on. It says binging, bloat, shame, anxiety. Those are a lot of different things. I feel like we touched on the binging and the shame and the anxiety and the stress in the beginning. So I just want to highlight bloat here. And I want to say it's normal. It's normal for our bodies to bloat. Not every single meal. I'm not talking like total distension, rock hard tummy, physically uncomfortable, need to lay down like every single meal. Okay, then we might want to look into that. There could be some underlying medical things going on. But around the holidays, if you're eating more fun foods and play foods, especially if you've restricted and been on diets for the majority of the year, and now you're coming into the holidays, it's normal to eat to a place of physical unpleasantness. Congrats. That's called being human. And so if and when you get bloated, normalize it. Say, this happens to everybody. This feeling will pass. If you feel physically unpleasant, recognize that and uncouple it from emotional unpleasantness of, I'm such a bad person. How could I do this? Why am I so out of control? So uncouple it from emotional unpleasantness and say, this feels uncomfortable. I feel discomfort in my body. I don't like this feeling. All of those things are valid. And this feeling will pass. Because recognizing that this is not permanent, I don't need to fix this. I just need to sit in the discomfort and recognize I don't like this feeling, and this feeling will pass. Whew. All right. Last one here. I have a very specific one, but I actually love this because we could also make it more broad for anyone similar. So it talks about a sister-in-law thanking her daughter for calling her skinny in front of the whole group and like really playing on a smaller body being a compliment and teaching that to this niece, right? This daughter of the woman thanking her. And I thought that this was a really cool question because it brings in kids into this situation. And so the person writing this is the little girl's aunt. And she was like, and then she wrote a part 2 of, I need advice. Like, I want to be a model of neutrality for my niece, but, also that's her sister-in-law's daughter. So it's like puts her in this weird position. So I think when something is so public like that, like if a mom to a daughter is like, thank you for calling me skinny, honey. Oh my gosh. Like, I love you so much. What a great compliment. First of all, if you're listening to this, you can go to a previous episode of the Fine Food Freedom podcast where I talk about how complimenting weight loss is not a compliment. And we talk about what real compliments are, and we really break that down. But that's neither here nor there. That's a whole nother episode. So what I want to encourage, if this happens to you and you see children around and they're at an age where they're absorbing and they're listening and you're noticing this, I wouldn't necessarily say anything in a big group where now it's going to be like you're almost trying to defend or prove something to the mother. Like, did you know that complimenting weight loss is not a compliment? Like, we don't want to say that in this group. In this instance, with this question, I would let the moment pass, let it pass, maybe change the subject if we can. But when you have a moment to pull the niece aside or be very intentional to have a conversation with the niece, you don't even have to go back to what her mother said. You don't need to make it about that moment. But I think you can say, I love your body. I love my body. I love your mom's body. I love everybody's body here. And I think it's so cool how we are all so different and unique and beautiful, regardless of our body size. And I think something like that can be really powerful where you're not trying, because it might feel like you're pinning yourself up against the mom. I think just bringing another perspective to the niece's forefront and just allowing another thought to come in of, hey, I think it's really cool that all bodies are beautiful and worthy of love, and the size of our body doesn't determine our worth or a beauty standard. And however you want to word it. And she's young, or I don't know how young this niece is, right? So she might say, okay, and like run off, right? Like, it's hard to say, but I would conserve your mental energy. Don't try to do like a family feud moment where it's you think this and I think this. I would just plant a seed maybe later on with that niece and give your neutrality 2 cents to that conversation. Oh, all right. This was a long one. It was much needed. So I really, really hope that you can walk away from this episode knowing it's not your responsibility to convince people not to diet. It's not your responsibility to convince people to be intuitive eaters. Everybody else's thoughts and opinions about your food choices and your body have everything to do with them and nothing to do with you. This holiday season, you can walk away from diet culture conversations. You can redirect them, or you can set a boundary and redirect them and be a badass bitch in those convos. Feel comfortable, feel confident. You can do this. Protect your mental energy. It is so worth it. And if you like this episode, please rate, review, subscribe. If you're like, holy shit, this was everything I needed to hear and I had no idea I needed to hear it, and you want more resources, please, please, please come on over to findfoodfreedomresources.com. We have free resources. We have a monthly membership, which has an unbelievable amount of support for only $27 a month. That's like 2 Starbucks drinks a month, truly, maybe 3, depending on the size that you get. And you get so much support, 2 group calls, 1 live masterclass, 60 plus masterclasses from previous recordings in a library, a live community of support, all of this for only $27 a month. So if you are someone who wants support, please, please, please come on over to findfoodfreedomresources.com and you can use the code I want food freedom for 3 months completely free of the membership. So we also have coaching if that's something you're interested in. Please take what serves you, leave the rest behind. Findfoodfreedomresources.com. Thank you for being here with me. Let's all take a deep breath. That was a doozy. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will see you soon.